Welcome back to Stories from the Stead. In today's episode about moonshining in Crawford County, Indiana, we went directly to the source, the newspaper, the Indianapolis Journal, from Saturday, May the 9th of 1903, in an article titled Hotel Lobby Gleanings, likely a reflection of the state of journalism at that time versus the trash they sell us today. Revenue officers that raided an illicit still in Indiana. The owner had previously notified the officers that he was out of business. Lobby chatter. Several revenue officers from various parts of the state have been in the city for the past 2 or 3 days to appear before the federal grand jury, and among others were 3 men, guests at the Hotel English, who recently had the distinction of raiding the first moonshine still that has been discovered in Indiana for several years. They were Fred D. Connor of New Albany, one of the deputies for the 7th District, and Captain A.J. Goodson and Lee W. Rodman of Cincinnati, special officers of the Revenue Service. The still was found in the hills of Crawford County near Leavenworth. The proprietor, James F. House, had been engaged in the manufacture of brandy up until the first of the year when he quote-unquote registered off. In revenue parlance, that means that he notified the officers that he would not run his still anymore. No further attention was paid to him. But a few weeks ago, Mr. Connor received an anonymous letter telling him that moonshine whiskey was being sold in Crawford County. Captain Goodson and Mr. Rodman joined him in the investigation, and as a preliminary step, they drove out to House's place to see what he was doing. They caught him red-handed. The still was in full operation, and he was turning out fine quality of moonshine, manufactured from corn and sorghum molasses. The officers compelled House to assist in the destruction of the copper still and made him tear down his furnace and knock to pieces about 50 mash tubs. Some of the tubs were concealed in his cellar, and there the officers found between 40 and 50 gallons of the whiskey, which they confiscated. The officers were called to this city to lay the facts in the case before the grand jury, and they brought with them a piece of the copper still. House was well equipped to turn out moonshine whiskey as his outfit, although small, was a modern one. It is understood that he pleaded, in extenuation of his violations of the revenue laws, that he was not making the whiskey to sell, but was merely laying in a small supply for the harvest season. Captain Goodson, who participated in the raid, is one of the veterans in the Revenue Service and has done duty all through the moonshine regions of North Carolina and Tennessee. The captain met with little accident recently in the pursuit of his official duties at Evansville that has furnished his fellow officers with a good story. The distillery at Evansville had went into the hands of a receiver last month, and Captain Goodson was called there in connection with the case. When he was going over the plant, he was bitten by a cat. It was not a serious wound, and he didn't think much of it, but his companions, in looking up the facility, found some data which gave his injury some little significance. The distillery was number 13. It was started and licensed on Friday the 13th of the month. The telephone in the office was number 1313, and the plant went into the hands of a receiver on April 13th. Captain Goodson, in visiting the establishment on the day it was turned over to the receiver, was bitten by a cat, and his friends claim it was a black cat at that. The captain, however, smiles at that, and he said yesterday when a crowd of revenue officers were commenting on the affair that if it were not for spoiling a good story, he could prove that the animal that assaulted him was a dog. But under the circumstances, he said, he would waive a little detail like that and let the story stand. Black cat and all. Captain Goodson, Mr. Rodman, and Mr. Connor left for their homes last evening, the grand jury having finished with their evidence. If black cats in number 13 and an association with a legal distiller gone rogue here in southern Indiana aren't enough for you, perhaps this "If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything" crossover will do it for you. For those who don't know, that is our Paranormal 14 and High Strangeness Spiritualist podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. This story's much older. Coming from the Princeton Journal, July 31st, 1852, entitled An Hour with the Spirits. A friend of ours on the levee yesterday informed us that some very mysterious revelations for several days past had taken place in his store, and excited our surprise so much by what we thought supernatural agency that we went down with him in order to satisfy ourselves. His store, by the by, was dark as a dungeon when he suddenly stopped and explained, "Hark, did you hear that scratch?" We made 3 jumps for the front door. With a nervous grasp, he caught us by the arm and allayed our fears with the assurance that it was nothing but a cat. Arriving at the extreme end, by the feeble light of the vault window, we were able to discover around us huge piles of coffee, salt, bags, and barrels. We didn't feel at all comfortable, for the enormous rats would sometimes put us in a tremor as they dashed up by rubbing their sleek sides against our legs. Our friend laid his hand upon our shoulder and in a very sepulchral voice inquired if we were willing to go on, at the same time admonishing us to put our trust in Providence. "Shall I raise the devil?" he said. We begged him not to try. Slowly he approached the wall and took there from a glass vial appended to a string. "This," he said, "is an important agent in the phenomenon I am about to exhibit to you. In fact, it will prove what you are to see." He stepped off to one side and took from a salt bag a wooden mallet with a long handle. "This," said he, "is an indispensable article for the successful accomplishment of this startling mystery. I call it the Spirit Elucidator." Vulgar professors, however, term it by the more common name, Bung Starter. Suddenly, a roaring sound almost deadened our senses. We thought a mist came over our eyes and a faint blue blaze was burning around us. We were about to cave in when our friend came to our rescue and somewhat calmed us by telling us that this noise was of the earth. I'm sorry here, guys. There's a little bit. It's a very faded text and it's hard to see all of it. So it was basically nothing but the sound of horses upon the stony street, while a lucifer match, which he had in his hand lit, explained the blue blaze which we had begun to think issued from the inferno. He took us by the hand, and we approached the veteran barrel. "This Bung Starter," said he, holding it out in his hand, "of itself can do nothing, yet in my hand is the involuntary slave of a power you'll soon see manifested. Shut your eyes." We closed our peepers very tight, not knowing what was to come next, when rap, rap was distinctly heard on the side of the barrel. Our friend took the vial with the string, inviting us not to be afraid, at the same time telling us to lay our hands upon the barrel in solemn and measured tones, thus spoke. "Question. Spirit, are you here? Who are you?" Answer. "Old Rye, I am that." Question. "Do you feel good?" Answer. "Very." Question. "How long since you passed from Earth?" Answer. "Some time." Question. "Where did it happen?" Answer. "In Pike County. I was cut off at quite a green age and hungered in the barn." Question. "Was your demise natural?" Answer. "Oh, very. I was mashed in a distillery." Question. "What sphere are you in?" Answer. "The 4th proof." Question. "What is the highest state of spiritual existence?" Answer. "The rectified state." Question. "Anybody there you know?" Answer. "Yes, John Barleycorn and Old Rotgut." Herein suddenly splash was heard in the barrel. We sorter swooned when our friend applied the glass vial to our mouth, and on taking it away said that the spirit was gone. We rubbed our stomach and felt perfectly satisfied that he had not deceived us. St. Louis Times.